Lisa Marie and her husband, John, were excited to see the new action movie, The Sentinel. They had been waiting for months for its release, and they were finally able to get tickets to the opening night show. As they drove to the theater, Lisa Marie couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The streets were deserted, and the only sound was the wind whistling through the trees. She tried to shake off her feeling of dread, but it just wouldn't go away. When they arrived at the theater, it was even more deserted than the streets. The parking lot was empty, and there were no cars parked on the street. The only light came from the marquee, which flickered ominously. Lisa Marie tried to ignore her fear and walked into the theater with John. The lobby was dark and empty, and there was no sign of life. They found their seats and sat down, but Lisa Marie couldn't help but feel like they were being watched. As the movie started, Lisa Marie tried to focus on the screen, but she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. She kept glancing around the theater, but she couldn't see anyone. Suddenly, a woman appeared out of nowhere and stood behind Lisa Marie. The woman was tall and thin, with long, dark hair that covered her face. She was wearing a black dress that clung to her body, and she had long, sharp nails. The woman reached out and grabbed Lisa Marie's shoulder. Lisa Marie screamed, but the woman covered her mouth with her hand. "Shh," the woman whispered. "Don't make a noise." Lisa Marie was terrified. She tried to pull away from the woman, but she was too strong. "I'm going to take you with me," the woman said, "and you're not going to say anything." The woman dragged Lisa Marie out of the theater and into the dark alleyway behind it. Lisa Marie struggled, but it was no use. The woman was too powerful. The woman took Lisa Marie to an abandoned building and locked her in a room. Lisa Marie was alone, scared and cold. She didn't know what to do or where to go. Meanwhile, John had noticed that Lisa Marie was missing. He looked around the theater, but he couldn't find her. He asked the other people in the theater, but no one had seen her. John knew that something was wrong. He left the theater and went to the police station. The police officers didn't believe John at first. They thought that he was overreacting and that Lisa Marie was probably just with friends. But John insisted that something was wrong. He told them about the woman he saw in the theater, and he begged them to help him find Lisa Marie. Finally, the police officers agreed to help. They searched the area around the theater, but they didn't find any sign of Lisa Marie. John was devastated. He didn't know what to do. He just wanted to find his wife and bring her home safely. As John was walking home, he saw a figure standing in the shadows. He approached the figure cautiously, and he realized that it was the woman he saw in the theater. The woman smiled at John, and he felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that she was the one who took Lisa Marie. The woman lunged at John, and he fought back. They struggled for a while, but the woman was too strong. She knocked John to the ground and started to choke him. John was close to passing out, but he saw a brick lying on the ground. He reached for the brick and hit the woman over the head with it. The woman fell to the ground, unconscious. John took a deep breath and called the police. The police officers arrived and arrested the woman. They took her to the police station and questioned her. The woman told the police officers that she was a demon. She said that she had been sent to Earth to capture humans and take them back to hell. The police officers didn't believe the woman at first, but they eventually had to admit that she was telling the truth. The woman was charged with kidnapping and attempted murder. She was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. John was finally able to go home and be with Lisa Marie. They were both safe, and they were grateful to be alive. Lisa Marie and John never went to the movies again. They were too traumatized by what had happened. They stayed home and watched movies on TV instead. Lisa Marie and John never forgot about the woman they saw in the theater. They knew that she was a demon, and they knew that she would never stop trying to get them. But Lisa Marie and John were no longer afraid. Story number 2. In the heart of the bustling city of Birmingham, nestled amidst towering skyscrapers and vibrant avenues, stood the majestic theatre, a relic of a bygone era. Its grand facade, adorned with intricate sculptures and shimmering lights, had captivated audiences for generations, its velvety curtains concealing a world of enchantment and escapism. However, beneath the veneer of glamour and entertainment lurked a sinister secret, a chilling tale of horror that had been whispered among locals for decades. Carol Ann, a bright-eyed and inquisitive young girl, was captivated by the allure of the majestic theater. She often regaled her parents with stories she had heard from her friends, tales of ghostly apparitions and eerie occurrences that had allegedly transpired within the theater's hallowed walls. Despite her parents' warnings, Carol Ann's fascination with the theater only grew stronger. One fateful evening, Carol Ann's parents, unable to resist their daughter's persistent pleas, decided to take her to the Majestic Theatre for a screening of a classic horror movie. As they stepped into the grand lobby, a hush fell over the crowd. The air was thick with anticipation, and the scent of popcorn and old velvet hung heavy in the air. Carol Ann, her heart pounding with excitement, led her parents to their seats. As the lights dimmed and the projector flickered to life, a sense of unease crept over Carol Ann. The shadows seemed to dance and writhe, and the silence was broken only by the haunting strains of the movie's score. As the film progressed, Carol Ann noticed a strange figure lurking in the projection booth. A tall, slender man, his face obscured by the shadows, seemed to manipulate the projector with an almost supernatural dexterity. The images on the screen flickered and distorted, and a sense of dread settled over the audience. Suddenly, the film abruptly cut to a scene of unspeakable horror. Grotesque figures danced and contorted on the screen, their eyes glowing with an eerie luminescence. The audience gasped in terror, and Carol Ann's heart pounded in her chest. Just as the scene reached its climax, the projectionist emerged from the booth, his face now fully revealed. His eyes were hollow, his skin pale and clammy, and a sinister grin curled his lips. He raised his hands towards the screen, and the grotesque figures leaped from the film, their claws outstretched. The audience screamed in terror as the figures swarmed among them, their touch draining the life from their victims. Carol Ann watched in horror as her parents were consumed by the shadowy creatures, their cries echoing through the theater. Carol Ann, paralyzed with fear, could only watch as the phantom projectionist orchestrated the chaos. He laughed maniacally, his eyes gleaming with a malevolent pleasure. Suddenly, he turned his attention towards Carol Ann, his grin widening. Carol Ann, her heart pounding in her chest, scrambled away from the phantom's grasp. She ran through the darkened theater, the screams of the dying echoing in her ears. She stumbled through the labyrinthine hallways, the shadows seeming to close in on her. Finally, she emerged from the theater, collapsing onto the cold pavement. She looked back at the Majestic Theater, its grand facade now looming ominously in the darkness. She knew that the phantom projectionist would continue his reign of terror, forever haunting the theater's halls. Carol Ann carried the memory of that night with her for the rest of her life. She never returned to the Majestic Theater, its haunted halls forever etched in her mind. The tale of the phantom projectionist became a chilling legend in Birmingham, a reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the city's glamorous facade. Story number 3. Robert Moore, a seasoned architect in Washington, had always been fascinated by the city's rich history. He found a particular allure in the old abandoned buildings that dotted the urban landscape, remnants of a bygone era. One gloomy Saturday night, as a torrential downpour lashed against the city, Robert decided to take his family to the historic Majestic Theatre, a once grand venue that had fallen into disrepair. Despite the warnings of his wife, Sarah, and their 2 young children, Emily and Tom, Robert was determined to explore the theatre's hidden depths. As they stepped into the vast, echoing lobby, the air was thick with a musty smell, and an eerie silence hung heavy in the air. The once vibrant murals on the walls were now faded and peeling, and the ornate chandeliers cast long, eerie shadows across the floor. Leading the way, Robert guided his family through the dimly lit corridors, their footsteps echoing off the marble floors. As they ventured deeper into the theater, a strange sensation crept over them, a feeling of being watched, of being alone in the presence of something unseen. They reached the projection booth, a dark, cramped space filled with antiquated machinery. Robert's eyes widened as he examined the old film projectors, their metal bodies gleaming in the faint glow of his flashlight. Suddenly, a deafening screech pierced the silence, sending a jolt of fear through the family. The film projector sprang to life, its reels spinning furiously, casting flickering images on the screen. The images were horrifying. Distorted faces, grotesque figures, and scenes of unimaginable terror. Robert and his family watched in horror as the images intensified, the figures on the screen seeming to leap out at them. Emily and Tom screamed, clinging tightly to their parents, their faces etched with fear. In a desperate attempt to stop the projector, Robert lunged forward, but as his hand touched the machine, a surge of energy coursed through him, sending him flying backward. The projector continued to spin, its images growing more and more terrifying. Suddenly, a spectral figure emerged from the screen, its form shimmering and translucent. The figure reached out towards Robert, its icy fingers brushing against his cheek. Robert felt a wave of cold wash over him, and his heart pounded in his chest. Sarah, her eyes wide with terror, grabbed her children and ran from the projection booth, leaving Robert alone with the spectral figure. The figure's face contorted into a grotesque grin, and it let out a chilling laugh that echoed through the theater. Robert closed his eyes, bracing himself for the inevitable, but the figure's touch was surprisingly gentle. It seemed to be searching for something, something only Robert could understand. As the figure's touch lingered, Robert felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. When he opened his eyes, the figure was gone, and the projector had ceased to spin. The room was dark and silent once again, the only sound the steady patter of rain against the theater's windows. Robert stood there for a moment, catching his breath, his mind reeling from the events that had just unfolded. He found Sarah and the children huddled together in the lobby, their faces pale and drawn. They embraced tightly, a silent vow to never return to the majestic theater again. As they drove away, the theater's imposing facade loomed behind them, a haunting reminder of the night they had confronted the darkness within. Months passed, and the memory of the majestic theater began to fade, replaced by the normalcy of everyday life. But Robert could never shake the feeling that something had changed that night, something deep within him. He had glimpsed into the abyss, and it had left an indelible mark on his soul. One day, while walking through the city, Robert noticed a flyer for a documentary about the majestic theater. It was said to be haunted by the spirit of a former projectionist who had met a tragic end within its walls. Robert felt a strange pull towards the documentary, a need to understand what had happened that night. As he watched the film, Robert was struck by the similarities between his experience and that of the projectionist. Both men had been drawn to the theater, both had experienced strange occurrences, and both had been touched by the spectral figure. The film ended with a chilling revelation. The spectral figure was not malevolent, but rather a lost soul seeking solace. It was trapped within the theater, unable to move on. Robert felt a surge of empathy for the figure, and he knew that he had to help it find peace. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed these horror stories from the world of movie theaters. As you can see, even in the seemingly safe and familiar environment of a cinema, there can be lurking danger. So next time you settle in for a movie, make sure to keep your eyes peeled and your senses sharp. You never know what might be hiding in the shadows. Before you go, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more horror stories. And if you have any scary movie theater experiences of your own, please share them in the comments below.